Maybe we should just be friends. Ashley said it like she was suggesting a different brand of wine. We were sitting at a crowded bar in downtown Denver, the kind of place where the music is just loud enough that people lean forward across the table to hear each other. Neon lights reflected off the bottles behind the bar, and the low hum of conversations filled the room. We had been together almost 2 years. I remember staring at the condensation running down my beer bottle while the sentence hung in the air between us. Most people expect a reaction in moments like that. Anger, confusion, negotiation, maybe a defensive speech about everything you've invested in the relationship. Ashley clearly expected something like that too. Instead, I nodded once. "Sounds good," I said. For a second, she blinked like she hadn't heard me correctly. "That's it?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied calmly. "If that's what you want." Her shoulders relaxed almost instantly. That was the first clue. She hadn't come to the bar expecting a breakup fight. She'd come expecting resistance, maybe even a little begging, something that would reassure her that she still mattered enough to fight over. When none of that happened, she looked relieved. "I just think we'd be better as friends," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You know, less pressure." "Sure," I said. Inside, though, I made a decision she didn't know about. If we were really just friends, then I would treat her exactly like one. And that meant something very specific. I would disappear. We finished our drinks without tension. In fact, the rest of the conversation almost felt normal. She started talking about work drama, a new show she'd been watching, and a coworker who kept messing up a project. It was surreal. 2 years together quietly downgraded to small talk over cocktails. When we finally left the bar, the night air was cool. The city lights stretched across the streets, and people were still pouring into restaurants and clubs. Ashley hugged me casually in the parking lot. "Thanks for understanding," she said. "No problem." She got into her car, waved once through the windshield, and pulled out of the lot. I stood there for a moment with my hands in my pockets, watching her taillights disappear into traffic. Then I got into my truck and started driving north. The highway toward Boulder is quiet at night. Long, dark stretches of road, the mountains sitting like shadows in the distance. Normally, I'd have music playing. That night, I drove in silence. And somewhere between Denver and Boulder, a realization settled in. For a long time, I hadn't really been Ashley's boyfriend. I had been her support system, the guy she called when work stressed her out, the guy who helped her move furniture, the guy who listened to hour-long vent sessions about coworkers, friends, and family drama, the guy who solved problems. And I had done it willingly, because that's what you do in a relationship. But now she wanted the relationship downgraded to friends, which meant the support system probably needed to disappear too. The moment that thought fully clicked, I actually felt lighter. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had already decided how the next few weeks were going to look. No arguments, no drama, no speeches about how she'd made a mistake. Just quiet compliance. The next morning I woke up early, made coffee, and checked my phone. Ashley had already sent a message. "Hope you got home safe," smiling face with smiling eyes. Old me would have replied immediately. Instead, I finished my coffee first. Then I responded with something simple. "Yeah, all good. Nothing else." That was the first change. The second happened over the next few days. Normally, I texted her first most mornings. Just a quick, "good morning," or "hope work isn't crazy today." This time I didn't, and something interesting happened. She noticed. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed again. "Hey stranger, you alive?" I was sitting at my desk working. I had a remote job with a small tech startup based in Austin, which meant most of my days were video calls, Slack messages, and long stretches of focused work. I looked at the text for a second before replying. "Yeah, busy week." Short, neutral, friendly. Exactly how I'd text a casual friend. Over the next few days, I made other small adjustments. I stopped replying instantly. I stopped asking about her day. I stopped offering help with random problems. Instead, I filled the time with other things. Work, the gym, meeting friends for drinks, Cleaning my apartment. Normal life stuff. Nothing dramatic. Just less Ashley. About 4 days after the bar conversation, she called me. I was halfway through a workout when my phone buzzed on the bench beside me. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she replied. "You've been quiet." I wiped sweat off my forehead with a towel. "Have I?" "Yeah," she said. "You barely text anymore." There was a short pause. Then I said the most obvious thing in the world. "Well, we're friends now." Silence. Not angry silence. Confused silence. Like she hadn't expected the new rules to actually apply. "Oh," she said slowly. "Yeah," I continued casually. "I figured you wanted space." "That's not what I meant." "Maybe not," I said. But it seemed like the easiest way to do the friend thing. Another pause followed. "Well, I just didn't expect things to change this much." I leaned back on the bench and looked up at the bright gym lights above me. "Things usually do," I said. And that was the moment she started realizing something she hadn't planned for. The friend version of me came with very different privileges. The friend version of me came with very different privileges. Ashley just hadn't realized that yet. For the first week after our conversation in Denver, the changes were small enough that she could pretend nothing was really different. I answered messages. I picked up calls. I was still polite. But something important was missing. Initiative. I stopped being the one who reached out first. That one change alone shifted the entire dynamic. Before the breakup conversation, our routine had been predictable. Good morning texts. Random memes during the day. Calls after work. Sometimes we'd meet up for dinner during the week or drinks on Friday nights. It wasn't dramatic or intense. Just steady. When that routine disappeared, Ashley started noticing the silence. The first real sign came about 6 days after the bar conversation. I was finishing a long work meeting with the team from Austin when my phone buzzed again. "Ashley, did you disappear or something?" I stared at the message for a moment before replying. "No, just working." A few seconds later, another message came through. "You used to text me during the day." There it was. The expectation. I leaned back in my chair and typed a simple response. "Yeah, when we were dating." 3 little dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the message arrived. "That's a little cold." I read it twice. Then I typed, "Just trying to respect the new boundaries." No anger, no sarcasm, just calm. And that seemed to bother her more than anything else could have. That weekend, she tried another approach. Saturday afternoon, I was at the gym when my phone buzzed again. "A few of us are going out tonight. You should come." That message was interesting. Normally, when Ashley invited me somewhere, it sounded casual. This one felt deliberate, like she was testing something. I finished my workout before replying. "What time?" 8. Same bar as last week. I thought about it for a second. Then I sent, "Can't tonight. Already have plans." That was technically true. I was meeting a couple friends to watch a game and grab food. But normally, if Ashley invited me somewhere, I'd change plans. This time I didn't. Her response came almost immediately. "With who?" Another interesting question. I smiled slightly before typing. "Friends." The typing dots appeared again. "Which friends?" That one made me laugh. Not out loud. Just the quiet kind of laugh when you realize someone is trying to regain control of a situation. I typed one final message. "Just people I know." Then I put my phone down and went back to my workout. Later that night, I checked my phone again. 3 messages from Ashley. "Guess you're busy. Have fun." And about an hour later, "You're acting weird." I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because I was doing exactly what she had asked for. Living my life without treating her like the center of it. Monday morning, she called again. This time I answered right away. "Hey," I said. "Ryan," she replied quickly. "Are you mad at me?" "No. You're acting like it." I walked into the kitchen and poured coffee while holding the phone against my shoulder. "I'm not mad." "Then why are you being distant?" I took a sip before answering. I'm not being distant. I'm just adjusting. To what? To being friends. Silence again. The same confused silence from before. Friends still talk, she said. They do. But you barely text. I shrugged even though she couldn't see it. Some friends text a lot. Some don't. That's not how we used to be. That's because we used to be dating. Another pause. Then she sighed. You're making this weird. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Am I? Yes. How? You're acting like I broke up with you. I almost laughed at that. Instead, I said something simple. You did. That conversation ended quickly after that. Not with yelling. Just with Ashley saying she had to get ready for work. But something had clearly shifted. For the first time since the bar conversation, she sounded unsettled. Like the situation wasn't unfolding the way she expected. 2 days later, she tested the boundaries again. This time it was more direct. Wednesday evening my phone buzzed while I was cooking dinner. Hey! Random question. I read the message but didn't respond right away. A minute later another text appeared. Can you help me move a dresser this weekend? That one made everything very clear. Ashley had moved into a new apartment a month earlier. When she needed help with something heavy or inconvenient, I had always been the first person she called. And until recently, I had always said yes. I set my phone on the counter and finished cooking before replying. 10 minutes later, I typed back. Probably not. The response came instantly. What do you mean probably? I've got plans. You always helped me before. I read that message twice. Then I typed the most honest answer I could think of. Yeah, when we were together. 3 dots appeared. Stopped. Appeared again. Finally the message came through. So you're just not going to help me now? I leaned back against the counter and stared at the screen. Then I wrote, that's usually boyfriend territory. She didn't reply for almost 20 minutes. When she finally did, the tone had changed. Wow. 1 word. That was it. I didn't answer, because at that moment something had finally clicked for her. The version of me she had kept in her life, the helpful one, the available one, the always there one, had only existed because we were in a relationship. And she had ended that relationship. What Ashley didn't realize yet was that the real consequences were only just beginning. Because a few days later, something happened that made the situation impossible for her to ignore. And that's when the friendship she suggested started to look very different from what she had imagined. What Ashley didn't realize yet was that the real consequences of her suggestion hadn't even started. For the first week, the changes between us had been subtle. Fewer messages, shorter conversations, less availability, but everything was still polite enough that she could pretend the dynamic hadn't really changed. That illusion ended the following weekend. Friday afternoon, I finished work early. The team from Austin had wrapped a product rollout, and my calendar finally cleared for once. Instead of sitting at home like I usually did, I decided to drive into the city. A few friends from college were meeting up at a brewery in Denver, and I hadn't seen them in months. Normally, Ashley would have been part of those plans. She liked tagging along to group hangouts. But this time I didn't mention it, because friends don't automatically get invited to everything. Around 7 p.m., while I was already at the brewery talking with 2 old buddies, my phone buzzed. Ashley, hey, what are you doing tonight? I glanced at the message, then looked around the table. My friend Jake was in the middle of telling a ridiculous story about getting locked out of his apartment. I typed a quick reply. Out with friends. A few seconds later, oh, where? That question again. Location checks. It used to feel normal. Now it just felt unnecessary. Just grabbing drinks. Another pause. Then, can I join? I stared at the screen for a moment. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I knew this was one of those moments where people accidentally recreate the exact dynamic they just ended. I typed back, probably not tonight. 3 dots appeared immediately. Why? The directness of the question almost made me smile, because the answer was obvious. But I still wrote it carefully. Just a small group. That was enough. She didn't reply for almost 15 minutes. Then my phone buzzed again. Wow. Same response as before. One word. But this time there was something else behind it. Frustration. When I got home later that night, she had sent 2 more messages. Didn't realize I wasn't welcome anymore. And, "You're really different lately." I read both messages while sitting on my couch. Then I typed a simple reply. "I'm just adjusting." Adjusting to what? To the fact that we're not together anymore. There was a long pause before the next message arrived. "That doesn't mean we stop hanging out." I leaned back against the couch and thought about that sentence. Because technically she was right. Friends can still hang out. But what she really meant was something else. She meant the relationship should stay emotionally the same. Just without the label. I typed back one sentence. "Sometimes people need a little space after a breakup." That message ended the conversation. 2 days later, Ashley called again. This time I answered while walking out of the gym. "Hey," I said. "Ryan, can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure. Are you seeing someone else?" I actually laughed. "No." "Then why are you acting like this?" "Like what?" "Like you don't care." I pushed the gym door open and stepped outside into the cool evening air. "I do care." "Then why does it feel like you're pulling away?" I thought about that question for a second. Then I said something simple. "Because that's what people usually do after a breakup." "But we didn't really break up," she said quickly. That sentence stopped me mid-step. I leaned against the wall outside the gym. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're still close," she said. "We just changed the relationship." That was the moment I realized the real misunderstanding. Ashley believed she had restructured the relationship. Girlfriend-friend. But she expected everything else to stay the same. Same emotional access. Same availability. Same priority in my life. She just didn't want the responsibilities that came with being my girlfriend anymore. I said the only honest thing I could. "That's not usually how it works." "Why not?" "Because when relationships change, people change too." The conversation ended awkwardly after that. Not angry, just tense. And over the next few days something new started happening. Ashley began reaching out more often. Random texts, short calls, memes, little attempts to recreate our old routine. But the difference now was that I didn't automatically respond. Sometimes I replied an hour later. Sometimes I answered the next morning. Sometimes I didn't answer at all. Not as a strategy. Just because I was actually busy living my life. About a week later, she tried something new. Thursday evening my phone buzzed while I was cooking dinner. "Hey, I'm moving into my new apartment this weekend." I read the message and nodded slightly. That explained the dresser request earlier. A second message followed. "Still need help with some furniture." I waited a few minutes before replying. "Can't this weekend." "Why not?" "Already booked." "With what?" I stared at the screen again. Then typed. "Just plans." 3 dots. Stopped. Started again. Finally the message came through. "You used to drop everything to help me." There it was. The sentence that said everything. I leaned against the kitchen counter and typed back calmly. "Yeah." Another pause. Then I finished the thought. "When we were together." She didn't reply for almost an hour. And when she finally did, the message was longer than usual. "I didn't realize breaking up meant you'd completely disappear." I read that slowly. Then I typed the most honest response I could think of. "I didn't disappear. You kind of did. I just stepped back." "Why?" I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I wrote one final sentence. "Because that's what friends usually do after a breakup." That was the night Ashley finally started realizing something important. The friendship she had suggested didn't come with the same benefits she had before. And a few days later, something happened that made that realization impossible to ignore. Because she asked me for another favor. And this time the answer changed everything. The next time Ashley asked for help, she didn't ease into it. She went straight for the assumption. It was Saturday afternoon, and I was halfway through cleaning my apartment when my phone buzzed. "Hey, are you free right now?" I checked the message while standing in my kitchen. "Not really. What's up?" Three dots appeared immediately. Can you come help me move a couch? I stared at the screen for a moment. There it was again. Not if I could help. Just the expectation that I would. Ashley had moved into a new apartment across town, and during our relationship I had been the default solution for anything heavy, complicated, or inconvenient. Furniture, car issues, trips to the hardware store. I'd done all of it without thinking. But that was when we were together. I typed a short reply. Probably not today. Her response came back almost instantly. What do you mean probably? I've got things going on. A few seconds passed. Then another message. You're seriously not going to help me? I leaned against the kitchen counter and read that sentence again. Not can't. Not maybe later. Just disbelief that the answer could be no. I typed calmly. I've got plans. What plans? The question made me laugh quietly. Not because it was funny, but because I suddenly realized something. Ashley still believed she had access to the same version of me she had before. The one who rearranged his day for her without hesitation. I typed back. Just stuff. Another pause. Then, you always helped me before. I took a breath before answering. Yeah. A few seconds passed. Then I added the rest. When we were together. That message sat there for a while. I could practically imagine her staring at the screen. Finally, the reply came. So now you're just refusing to help me? I thought about the wording. Refusing. Like I was breaking some agreement. I typed one line. That's usually boyfriend territory. The typing dots appeared. Stopped. Started again. Then disappeared completely. For almost half an hour there was nothing. I went back to cleaning. About 40 minutes later my phone buzzed again. Ashley. Wow. One word. Again. But this time it felt heavier. Less sarcastic. More irritated. I didn't respond. Because there really wasn't anything else to say. Later that evening she called. I was sitting on my couch watching a basketball game when the phone started ringing. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, Ryan, what is going on with you? Her voice sounded sharp. What do you mean? You know what I mean. Not really. You're acting completely different lately. I leaned back into the couch. Different how? You used to care. I still care. Then why are you acting like I'm some random person? I didn't answer immediately, because technically, that was exactly what had happened. She had changed our relationship, which meant my role in her life had changed too. You're not a random person, I said. Then why wouldn't you help me move? I kept my tone calm. Because we're not together anymore. That shouldn't matter. I almost laughed. That's exactly what it affects. There was a pause. Then she sighed loudly. So what now, we just pretend we don't know each other? No. Then what? We're just not each other's priority anymore. Silence. Longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning on the other end of the line. Ashley had expected the label to change. But not the reality. Finally she spoke again. That's not what I meant when I said we should be friends. I know. Then why are you acting like this? I stared at the TV screen for a moment before answering. Because that's how it usually works. What does? Breakups. Another pause. But we didn't really break up, she said quietly. That sentence made everything suddenly clear. In her mind, the relationship had simply shifted categories. From boyfriend to close friend. In my mind, it had ended. You said we should just be friends, I replied. Yes. So that's what I'm doing. But you're barely around anymore. That's pretty normal after a breakup. She let out a frustrated sigh. You're making this weird. Am I? Yes. How? You're acting like you lost something. I didn't respond right away. Because the truth was, I had, but not in the way she thought. I just adjusted, I finally said. The call ended shortly after that. No yelling. No insults. Just tension. But something had clearly shifted. For the first time since the bar conversation in Denver, Ashley sounded uncertain. Like the situation wasn't going the way she expected. And over the next few days, that uncertainty slowly turned into frustration. because the more she tried to recreate our old dynamic, the more obvious it became that it was gone. 3 days later, she sent another message. This one looked casual, but it changed everything. "Hey, are you going to Jake's birthday thing next week?" I stared at the screen. Jake was part of our shared friend group. Before the breakup, we would have gone together without even discussing it. Now the situation was different. I typed a simple reply. "Yeah." A minute passed. Then another message arrived. "Cool. I'll see you there." I set the phone down on the table, because something told me that night was going to be interesting. Ashley still believed she could step back into my life whenever she wanted. But she hadn't yet seen what that actually looked like from the outside. And that birthday party was about to make everything very clear. Jake's birthday party was the first time Ashley and I had been in the same room since the night at the bar in Denver. Up until then, everything between us had been messages and short phone calls. Distance makes situations easier to manage. You can choose when to respond. You can control your tone. But real life doesn't work that way. When you're standing 5 feet away from someone, the dynamic becomes obvious very quickly. The party was at a rooftop bar downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a casual place where our group usually met for birthdays or random weekend drinks. When I arrived, Jake and a few others were already there. Music playing. People talking over each other. The usual chaos. I grabbed a beer and started catching up with a couple guys I hadn't seen in a while. For the first half hour, everything felt completely normal. Then someone said, "Oh hey, Ashley's here." I didn't turn around immediately, but I felt the shift in the group. Ashley had always been one of the more social people in our circle. She liked attention, liked conversations flowing around her, and she walked into the party the same way she always had. Confident, relaxed, like nothing had changed. When she finally noticed me, her expression shifted slightly. Not shocked, more like relieved, like she had been wondering if I would actually show up. She walked over with a small smile. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We hugged briefly. Not the kind of hug we used to have. Just the quick, polite version people use with acquaintances. "How've you been?" she asked. "Good. Busy." "Yeah." It was a simple conversation, but something about it felt completely different. Ashley kept looking at me like she was trying to figure something out. Like the version of me standing there didn't match the one she remembered. For the next hour, we moved around the party separately, talking to different people, drinks, music, normal stuff. But every now and then I'd catch Ashley glancing in my direction. Not in an obvious way, just quick looks, checking, observing, trying to read the situation. Eventually she came over again while I was talking with Jake and 2 other friends. "Ryan," she said casually, "you disappeared earlier." Jake looked between us. "Yeah, man? Where'd you go last weekend? We thought you were coming out." "I had plans," I said. Ashley tilted her head slightly. "With who?" That question again. Same tone she used in texts. Jake laughed. "Dude's got a secret life now apparently." I shrugged. "Just friends." Ashley smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Later in the night, the group started moving toward another bar a few blocks away. Ashley naturally fell into step next to me while we walked. For a minute we didn't say anything. Then she spoke. "You've been different lately." I looked over at her. "Different how?" "You're quieter, I guess. You used to talk to me more." I smiled slightly. "We used to date." She frowned. "That shouldn't change everything." I didn't answer right away, because that sentence explained the entire misunderstanding. Ashley believed the relationship had simply shifted categories. Boyfriend-friend. But the emotional structure of our lives would stay the same. Same closeness. Same priority. Same access. She just didn't want the responsibilities that came with being my girlfriend anymore. But that's not how people work. When relationships end, people naturally create distance. Not out of anger, out of necessity. We reached the next bar and everyone spread out again. At one point Ashley sat next to me at the bar. "So," she said casually, "have you met anyone?" The question caught me slightly off guard. Met anyone? You know, dating. I shook my head. No. She nodded slowly. Good. That single word hung in the air. Good. I asked. Yeah, she said quickly. I just meant, you know? It's probably too soon. I didn't respond. But that moment revealed something interesting. Ashley didn't want to be in a relationship with me anymore. Yet the idea of me dating someone else clearly made her uncomfortable. About 20 minutes later, she tried something else. A subtle test. The group was talking about moving to a different place when Ashley turned toward me. Hey, can you give me a ride home later? That question would have been completely normal a month earlier. But now it meant something different. I took a sip of my drink before answering. Probably not tonight. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Why? I'm heading a different direction. You used to drive me all the time. Yeah, I said calmly. When we were together. She stared at me for a second, then looked away. That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. For the rest of the evening, Ashley was quieter. Still talking. Still social. But every now and then she'd glance at me like she was trying to process something. And I realized what it was. For the first time since suggesting we just be friends. She was seeing what that actually meant. No automatic rides. No favors. No emotional priority. No default place in my plans. Just another person in the room. Near the end of the night, she walked over one last time. Ryan, she said softly. Yeah. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are we really just friends now? I looked at her for a moment. Then I answered honestly. That's what you wanted. She didn't respond. But the expression on her face told me something important. For the first time, Ashley wasn't completely sure she liked the outcome of her own idea. And over the next few weeks, that realization was about to get a lot stronger. After Jake's party, Ashley started reaching out more often. At first, it was small things. Memes, random texts, questions about my week. Felt like she was trying to rebuild the routine we used to have. But the difference now was simple. I didn't center my day around her anymore. Sometimes I answered hours later. Sometimes the next day. And sometimes not at all. About a week after the party, she called again. Ryan, can I ask you something honestly? Sure. Do you still care about me? I paused for a moment before answering. Of course I do. Then why does it feel like you're disappearing? I leaned back in my chair. I'm not disappearing, I said calmly. I'm just living my life. There was silence on the other end. You didn't used to be like this, she said quietly. That's because we were together. Another pause followed. For the first time since the breakup, Ashley sounded unsure. Like she was realizing something she hadn't expected. Being just friends meant she no longer had the same place in my life. A few weeks later, everything shifted again. Ashley texted me late one evening. Can we talk? I called her. She sounded nervous. I think I made a mistake, she said. With what? With us. I stayed quiet while she continued. I thought staying friends would keep everything the same, she admitted. But it doesn't feel the same at all. That's because it isn't, I replied. She sighed softly. I miss how things used to be. I looked out the window of my apartment and thought about that for a moment. I understand, I said. Does that mean we could try again? That question hung between us for a few seconds. Then I answered honestly. You're the one who changed the relationship, Ashley. So that's it. Yeah, I said quietly. Sometimes when you change something, you can't change it back. And for the first time, she had no response.